Yeah, we've been married for 52 years, so I thought Spencer and I asked her to come along because she has a unique, different perspective on everything that happened. So thought she might be able to answer some questions that pertain to the marriage part of being in the service. So I want it to be casual, so please ask questions. Spencer's been asked to get me back on track if I start wandering too far away. So, like Spencer said, I've got over 31 years of military service, flying helicopters and airplanes for the Army. I've got over 22 and a half years of active duty, and it all started with Vietnam. So you guys had questions, didn't you?
When did you enlist?
I'm out of Hillsboro. Joyce is out of Beaverton, so that's where we finished high school. That was in the middle of the Vietnam War, and so as I went to college, I was working full-time as a night crew at a grocery store, getting off work at 6 in the morning, running down to Portland State trying to go to college. I had two problems. Number one is I kept falling asleep before class, and the other is I was an average snow skier at the time, and I'd come out of Hillsboro over the hill by the zoo, and Mount Hood would call way too often. So I go, do I go to class or do I go snow ski? Snow skiing won out. So as Spencer's older brother so eloquently put it, I flunked out of college. Are you guys familiar with the draft that was occurring during that time? So I knew my time was coming. So I'd started with a college deferral, knew that I was getting close to being drafted. So I'd been watching the Vietnam War enough that I knew I didn't want to be on the ground, didn't want to be an infantryman. So I did my rounds, said, flying's a good deal, I might like that. Went to all the other services, they said, show me a 4-year degree, we'll send you to flight school. Army pretty much said, you walked in under your own power, if you can pass the test, we'll send you to flight school. So really that's as difficult as it was. So I waited until I got my draft notice in hand, went down to the recruitment center, and I said, here I am. That was on Wednesday. Took all the tests, took the physical, and I got on the airplane to leave to basic training on Friday. So I didn't have much time to think about it or worry about it. So that's how that one went.
What do you recall from your first days in the service?
When you get off the airplane, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Middle of spring, probably the second worst place to ever be. And if you watch movies of people when they get to basic training, you know, it's yelling, commotion. What they're trying to do is intimidate you, and they start breaking you down so that everybody starts at exactly the same place. And then through the process of basic training, they start building you back up. But so probably the most intimidating part was that first day and a half after getting off the bus. After that, then you just kind of fall into a routine, and after about 2 weeks, it becomes just the norm to be yelled at and lose sleep and do those kinds of things.
What did it feel like?
Felt like you were a fish out of water. You got to the point where initially you're kind of going, what am I supposed to do? Whatever I do, it's going to be wrong, and I'm going to get yelled at. So you're always kind of going second guessing yourself, always trying to outguess the drill instructors and what they want out of you. Like I said, and that's about the first week, then it kind of settles down.
Did you have any outstanding experiences during basic?
Survived it. Through the middle of basic, I think I got my first weekend pass. So they let you off base for a little bit. At that point, you were not sure who you were supposed to salute. So we took a cab down to one of the hotels, and they had a doorman in a uniform. He got saluted by all of us. We didn't care if it was a cab driver, a doorman, the security guard. If he was wearing a uniform, he got saluted. And Joyce used to just laugh at me because that carried for a while.
Which wars did you serve in?
I did Vietnam firsthand. In my 31 years, I was actually in the service during Desert Storm, Iraqi Freedom, Iraq, and Afghanistan. I did not go to those locations because by then I had moved up through the ranks and certain units would be picked to go, and I was in another unit that didn't get picked to go. So I was in the service through all of that stuff, but never. Vietnam is my only overseas combat experience.
Do you remember arriving? What was it like?
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
The overwhelming remembrance is the airplane landed and they opened the door. Temperature is probably 105 and it's humid. I mean, you open the door and it just takes your breath away from you. Mixed with that is a smell that you're kind of going, what the heck am I smelling? Didn't find out till later when you get out to the units, Vietnam really had no sewage infrastructure. And so all over the country, in our case, and it was the case at most military outposts and bases around the country, we had outhouses. Ours happened to be a 5-holer. Well, rather than digging holes into the ground, they would cut off 55-gallon drums. They'd cut them about this high. Every night, a detail came around. They would pull those 55-gallon drums out, fill them full of diesel or jet fuel, kind of the same thing, and burn them. And that was everywhere in the country, even in the little Vietnamese villages, not that necessarily that they were burning them, but there was no sewage, so that was everywhere. And so that smell permeated with that intense heat and humidity was kind of everywhere. And after about a month, you got used to it and quit paying attention to it. So, carrying a little touch farther, same kind of a feeling, fish out of water. You're just wandering around going, what the heck am I doing here? And where do I go next? You know, so people would greet you and they'd send you off to this building to get processed, and from the airport, from the main airport, then they would just ship you off all over the country. So you really never knew exactly where you were going until you got in country, which unit you were going to, where in the country you were going.
What was your job / your assignment?
I was a Cobra helicopter gunship pilot. So that's us when we were really young.
Yeah, way back when.
Probably the one that shows the guns, the rocket tubes.
There.
So that's what I flew. Cobra gunship. It had only one purpose, and that was to put rockets and minigun and grenades on the ground to support the guy on the ground. Our sole purpose, get people out of trouble. Protect the guys on the ground. Let me see. Do you have one where it shows the rocket tubes? That's the cockpit of it. Lots of bells and whistles and gauges and knobs. This was a Huey gunship. I flew the Cobra, which is the next generation of that. This is what they started with in Vietnam. They were a small Huey, underpowered, couldn't go very fast, and they didn't do the job. You can see they don't have very many of the rocket pods along the side there, and then they had a little minigun on top, a little machine gun on top. Inadequate. So there was an emergency directive sent back to the States as we need gunship power. So they took the regular Huey, modified it, and put lots of guns on it. And so when I went over, that's what I flew, was the other one, the latest version. Yep. A lot of hands.
Yeah.
That's one of my John Wayne pictures. So there's my, is that mine? One of them similar to mine. I think it's a better picture. Yours doesn't, it doesn't come up with a thumbnail to it. There we go. These two, these bottom three right now. So I labeled that with my cool dude picture, you know, my John Wayne impression there. So the Cobra sits with a aircraft commander / rocket guy in back, and sitting below him and in front is the co-pilot, and they were interchangeable, but the guy that runs the minigun, machine gun, and the grenade launcher. So we switch back and forth a lot. I'll get into that a little bit, but we switch back and forth a lot. So that's the seating configuration. The guy that's going to shoot the rockets generally in back, guy running the miniguns in front. This was my aircraft, Have Gun Will Travel. That was a popular TV cowboy show back when all of this was going on. And if you see the rocket tubes on the outside that had a little wing on it, each of those rocket tubes carried 19 rockets. So when we went out, we flew with 76 rockets. The minigun was a 6-barrel Gatling gun that would fire 3,000 rounds a minute, and we carried 3,000 rounds. On the other side of those barrels is another little stubby barrel that's a 40-millimeter grenade launcher. So it'd be like chucking out softballs, and it put 150 a minute out, and we carried 150 grenades. And we just called it the chunker, because the sound it made in the aircraft was ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. So that was the minigun, and the grenade launcher were used as our personal defense after coming out of a rocket run. So I'll talk more about it as we get through it.
How do you know where to shoot the gun at up front?
Has a sighting system, just like a game console now. You know, a couple of hands, one ran the miniguns, one ran the chunker, had a reticle in it, and it was floating up there, meaning it was on a gimbal, and so wherever you pointed it, the guns went. So, and you had probably, I won't say it was 90 degrees, but probably 80 degrees either side of center. You had control to move the guns that way.
Did you see combat, and were there many casualties in your unit?
Yeah. I didn't know it until much later. Helicopter piloting in Vietnam was the most dangerous job of anybody in Vietnam, per numbers. 1 out of every 18 helicopter pilots was killed. 20% were wounded. So, didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was going to the safe place. Actually, I went the other way. So, Vietnam, long and skinny. We started, my initial unit was down south. kind of towards the middle of the country. And when I got to Vietnam, I'll background up a little bit more. North Vietnam is trying to invade South Vietnam. Along the border of those two countries is Laos and Cambodia. Along the border is a trail that would be equivalent to I-5 down out through Portland, called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That's where all the supplies, ammunition, whatever they needed went from North Vietnam throughout the southern part of Vietnam through Cambodia and Laos. So when I got to Vietnam, I spent a month in Cambodia when we weren't supposed to be in Cambodia. And what we had were long-range reconnaissance patrols going across the border, trying to find out where are these ammo storage areas, where are the fuel storage areas, where are these people massing before they came across to attack us. And so we were supporting these long-range reconnaissance patrols. And so if they got in trouble, we would dash across the border, pick them up, and bring them back, get them out of there. Like I said, our whole job was to keep the guys on the ground as safe as we could. So we spent a month over doing that. Then we came back, and then somebody miraculously decided that we should be in Cambodia. So after a month in Vietnam, we went back to Cambodia. This time we were supposed to be there, so we actually had troops on the ground. We actually did missions. So, trying to get chronologically, first time I got shot down twice. First time was trying to recover troops out of a fire base, and the fire base might be as big as your new gym. I mean, it's that big around. And we probably had 300 people on the ground. And the bad, I just refer to them as the bad guys. We're trying to overrun them. And we tried to get in, and we got beat back. We had about 3 aircraft shot down trying to get in land to pull them out. And so I'd been up there for all week, providing gun cover to the Huey would come into land. Our job would be to shoot rockets past him, in front of him, so that whoever might be in the jungle wanting to shoot back would at least get their heads down long enough for him to get in and get out. So I'd been 7-8 days up there doing that. We came back out, and we were briefed for the next day's flight that they were going to try and go in with an armored column, so tanks, armored personnel carriers, whatever they had that had armor. We're going to try and run up the road to get into that fire base. Well, the bad guys outsmarted us, and they set up all their defenses right on the edge of the road. And so as these guys started up the road as fast as they could go, a rocket-propelled grenade would hit one of the armored personnel carriers and it would blow up. A tank behind him would just ram him off the road and keep going. Well, that's get slightly ahead of myself. So anyway, I said, okay, where do you want me, boss? He goes, you're off. You've been up there too often. You are off tomorrow. So I said, okay, I'm off. Do whatever I want. Right me, I called a buddy of mine at another unit that I knew was flying command and control. What we did is anytime there was a huge operation, we would put a commander in an aircraft up high so they could kind of watch the whole thing. So I called him, I said, bump your co-pilot, I want to go. So he did, so I ran over, jumped in the aircraft with him, and we took off. First thing we did was an emergency medevac out of a little fire base halfway up there. So I'd never landed and just sat on the ground in the combat zone. So we're sitting there and they started mortaring us. And so we're sitting there and mortars are blowing up. Dirt's coming onto the aircraft. Well, how long are we going to sit here? He just looked at me calmly, as long as it takes. Okay, don't like this much either. So we took off, then went out, did our CNC thing. We were actually in control of 8 Cobras, trying to shoot up the tree line as these tanks went in. And we're 7,000 feet, we're up high. And all of a sudden we hit the call, Mayday, Mayday, Blue Max 24 is going down. And just that fast, aircraft commander put the aircraft in a dive, just poof. And we're coming out of the sky, and I kid you not, my words were, where are we going? Says, we're gonna pick him up. As soon as he hits the ground, we're gonna be there. Looked over and he said, do you mind if I wait here? Are you gonna come back and get me? I'll just wait right here if you don't mind. He goes, no, you're going with me. So luckily, the Cobra that called the Mayday said, it's still flying, I'm gonna get it out of here. And so we took a couple of hits in this dive. And so we were low on fuel, so we got another command and control, kind of passed the controls across to him. And we said, we're going to the ground. We're going back. So we went back just a short ways, landed, and as the crew chief stepped out of the aircraft, he just looked up and went, shut it down. We'd taken rounds. The rotor blade on the helicopter comes in to where it hooks to the mast, where everything spins, and it's doubled up. It's made stronger, 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 stronger. We'd taken a round in that doubler, and one blade came around at this angle, and the other one came around at this angle. The end result, maintenance told us we probably had about 15 seconds before the blade let go. Once the blade let go, it turns into a slick brick. Just comes straight down. So that part you just accept. The next part is nobody knew where I was, nobody knew what I was doing, and we're stranded on this little supply point, a refueling point for the helicopters. So I was out there all night. Next day, we're hitchhiking back to where I was going. I had to make 2 stops. Huey would come by land for fuel. Where are you going? Can I go with you? So I got back to the unit. Commander says, hey, did you have a good day off? Sir, you don't even want to know. Not a clue. Well, I'm not going to tell you what I did. So that was the first time. Second time, back in Cambodia, got a call that we had an aircraft shot down. So we were going out to make sure that the crew got picked up. Well, we came into the area. We were getting briefed by the guy that was controlling it. And I say, yeah, I got the aircraft and I've got the troops on the ground moving to the aircraft. And he said, those are not ours, only enemy on the ground. So he said, okay. So we started shooting and we made a dive, pulled out, turning left. Made a dive, pulled out, turning left. The first rule was, don't repeat yourself too often because then they can anticipate it. So I was in the front seat, training a new guy in the back seat. I said, brake right, go right. We made the turn and we took a 51 cal through the bottom of the aircraft, up through the radio console. And everything caught fire for a while, electrical fire kind of a thing. So it blew the radios up, came up past his head and then went out the top of the aircraft. So the one medal that I always did not want was a Purple Heart. So I made it without getting one. So he in fact got wounded enough that he got a Purple Heart out of it, but we had to put the aircraft down in the middle of all this chaos. But right on cue, here came the CNC bird. He was on the ground beside us before we even got the canopies open to get out of the aircraft. So those were the 2 biggies.
Can you tell the pawn story?
Which one?
The pawn story.
Oh, he's heard this one about. So things had kind of settled down a little bit, and we used to live in one place and commute out about an hour to a forward fire base. Had a little runway and had refueling and had our armament stuff. And so we were just flying out there. We always flew past this huge marsh swampy area, and it had literally thousands of ducks in it. Don't know what came over us, but I said, I'll bet I can shoot one of those ducks with my pistol. Sounds like a good idea at the time. So, but you got to get the aircraft slowed down. You got to go below 35 miles an hour just to open the doors on it. and we got to get low if I'm going to hit it. It's like a little 38 pea shooter kind of a thing. So I leaned out, I'm hanging out the window, we're really slow, we're really low, and I'm going poop, 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 poop. Dang it, I can see the water splashing, ducks don't care. So come around, I'm going to do that. Loaded up again, poop, 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 poop. We went through a whole case of ammo, like 500 rounds of 38 rounds. Poor little barrel on my 38 was melted by then, so I got his 38. I went boop, 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 boop. And he goes, he's telling me, you are worthless. Holy smokes, I can't believe you can't hit one of those ducks. Give them to me. So I gave him up there, gave him some ammo. What I didn't realize is that he had armed the minigun and the chunker. So when we came back around, we're low, we're slow, and all of a sudden I hear this, boom, 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 boom. Told you I was going to get one of those ducks. So we did it again. So then we said, okay, that's enough. We got to go get fuel. We got to go rearm for all the ammo we wasted. So we landed, and while we're sitting in the rearming point, sirens went off, fire trucks rolling, ambulances rolling, and in came this Air Force twin-engine, high-wing, smaller cargo plane, and he's smoking, all the way. So he landed, so he said, we got to go find out what's going on. So we went running over there, got with the pilots, go, what the heck happened to you? Where? He goes, you know that big marsh out there with thousands of ducks? Yeah. He said, we let down a little early, started coming across that marsh, and that whole marsh opened up on us. We're going, oh my gosh, we cheated death on that one. Our assumption was that we had enough firepower going out that they were afraid to fire at us. So they waited for some poor, helpless little airplane to come by and shot him up.
Can you explain any call signs, like rank or insignia, or like the stuff that was on the side of your guys' helicopters?
We didn't so much put call signs. A lot of the aircraft, we flew every aircraft. We had 12 Cobras in our unit, and we just flew whatever was available maintenance-wise that day. So we changed around, but we had an aircraft that was assigned to us to kind of keep track of. So even though somebody else might be flying it, we would take a look at it every week, 10 days, just to make sure it was still looking. Another set of eyes to inspect the aircraft is what it amounted to. So my call sign was Blue Max 37. And so when you checked in, with how it would work, we had 3 primary missions. I'm going to go back to the day one. I went to my unit. It's the Cobra unit. My very, very first flight in country, I was with a guy that had been there 2 years. And we walked out to the aircraft, and we had these huge armor-plated panels that literally just sat on our lap. There wasn't any of this fancy bolted on and strap it on kind of a thing. So I walked up to the aircraft, he handed me his. And I said, I really don't need yours, I've got mine. And he just looked at me, serious as could be. He said, new guy, remember one thing. Your only job is to keep any bullet that comes through the front of this aircraft from getting to me. If you fail at that job, I will personally kill you. Oh my God, this is going to be a long year. Still, the very first day, still with the same guy, we're covering, I said we had 3 jobs. Medevac cover. Anytime a medevac went out, we went with it. The other one is covering lifts. So when the Hueys were going to make an insertion of troops, we went with them to try and cover them. And then the third was anytime anybody was in contact and they needed extremely close support because we could fire really close to them, then we got called, troops in contact. So anyway, we're on a medevac cover, and he's in a hover hole, meaning he's hovering probably 100 feet off the ground, and he's waiting because they've got a guy on a hoist coming up through the jungle, and we went right down into the hole with him. Now we're heavy, overloaded, and we're a gunship. We're supposed to be up high watching this stuff. And I made the mistake of asking, why are we in this hover hole with medevac? And he just said, let's get it straight. There are 4 of them, 2 of us. If anybody takes fire, if anybody goes down, it will be us. Now I know I'm not going to like it here anymore. So that was the mentality. You know, it's everybody's after the guy on the ground, for the guy on the ground.
Well, building off that pond story, how did you guys entertain yourselves?
Oh, we got stupid stuff. At our main base area, where we lived was a long rectangular building that just probably a year before us had nothing in it. Just a long, we called it the chicken coop. You know, just a long straight building. Had walls and a roof and that was it. So the rockets came in boxes that were like little 1x4 pine things. And we would take all those boxes apart and we would use them for our lumber, and we went in and we built walls and built rooms out of it, kind of a thing. So that was one way. But the big issue was rats. The rats were the size of normal cats. They were everywhere. So one of the guys came up with this brilliant idea that he was going to take care of the rat situation. So he built himself a little lifeguard chair, and he put a light on it. And the buildings would kind of, one here, one here, one here, one here, and then over here, one. So he kind of set it up in the middle of these buildings and throw a little food out, and he had a Thompson 45 machine gun with a silencer on it. And with a silencer, all you hear is the bolt going, that kind of a thing. So he'd sit up there, wait till he thought he heard the appropriate amount of rats, flip the light on, and just go boom, 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 shooting rats. Well, he did that until one day he heard the appropriate amount of noise, flipped the light on, go boom, 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 looked up, and his commanding officer is standing right there in the middle of the rats. Light went off, he vanished, and that was probably the last time he went rat hunting. We built these rooms out of this little 1x4 pine. Well, in order to get some rigidity for a bookshelf, we would measure up on both sides. You know, it was joint effort, so we'd measure up on both sides and then tack them so that we at least had a little rigidity there. Well, one night we were all asleep and you hear this yelling, and I grabbed my pistol, sat up in order to, just in time to see my wall exploding coming at me. And I laid down and he stitched right across the top of me. Well, it was my roommate on the other side woke up in the middle of the night, had a rat sitting on his chest eating crackers or whatever he was eating, and he took offense to that. So he had his machine gun, his Thompson, and he's going boom, 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 boom. So he was yelling and screaming at this rat, shooting up the whole building, and so we politely took his gun away from him, said, you don't get that for a while. We used to fly to another location. We would get as close to where the action was going to be as possible. So we were at another fire base where we went pretty routinely, and what they gave us to live in was about a 15-foot tall triangular culvert, just like you'd see along the highway out here. It was just wide enough to put 4 cots in. So we had to get boxes, and we kind of leveled the floor because it was still curved at the bottom. So we got the floor leveled, and we lived up there. We would go up for a week, 10 days, whatever it took, and the rats started invading us. So we decided, I wonder if we can smoke the rats out. So sure, why not? We'll throw a red smoke grenade in there and see if they go away. They didn't. They liked it. So all over the base after that, you'd see little red rats running all over the place. And everything in there with our cots, you know, whatever we had in there was red. So we decided that wasn't a good idea either. So that's pretty much, that was our entertainment. Chasing the rats.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I got 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, which is the highest award for valor during flight. I got Air Medals, which are the next one down. I got 45 Air Medals with valor for operations we were doing over there. And then all the other regular stuff. Those were the 2 directly related to combat.
What was the first medal called, sorry?
Distinguished Flying Cross.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
We did.
What would they consist of?
Probably 50% of the meals that I ate were sea rations left over from World War II and Korea. They were not great. And then at some point, we upgraded to MREs, the meals ready to eat. It's dehydrated food like you buy in a backpacking stuff. Slightly better, but not cuisine meals at all. If we got to a fire base during one of the holidays, they would actually fly in hot food like Thanksgiving, those kinds of things, and that was usually pretty good. Of course, anything was pretty good by that point. But where the real emphasis was on the aircraft, if we'd get an aircraft shot up, they could repair it overnight. So they had enough spare parts that they would put it back together again. I tell people, remember that I went in the service, I was 19. Finished flight school, just turned 21. Flight school was a year long. Spent 6 months down in Texas, learning how to fly just these little bitty, like you see the little Robinson helicopters where they're doing all their flight training and it's only this big. We flew a similar kind of a thing for about 6 months. Then we were shipped over to Fort Rucker, Alabama, where we flew tactics. So we spent 6 months in helicopters, in the troop transport type helicopters, learning how to fly the formations, learning how to land in fields and get the people off the aircraft and that kind of stuff. And then we went to Vietnam. It's just like you guys when you get your driver's license. Hey, man, I'm the best driver ever. Well, as you'll soon learn, no, you're not. You know, you hit Vietnam and you are just a pilot and you have a ton of things to learn. We were in Vietnam. Your tour is for 1 year. So we have 1 year to learn everything that it takes to be a aircraft commander, mission commander, capable gunship pilot or Huey pilot or whatever. It would be exactly the same as if you had to learn everything that you're learning here in 4 years in 1 year. We used to call it drinking from a fire hose because information just came and came and came. When you got to Vietnam, you were the new guy. You flew the front seat as a bullet catcher. You would do that for maybe 3 weeks or so until the aircraft commander thought that you were smart enough to move to the back seat. And then you started firing rockets, you started making radio. We have 3 radios in the aircraft and we're on a mission. All 3 of them are going simultaneously. You're using one to talk to the guys on the ground, one to talk to your wing ship or the Hueys that you're escorting, and another one for command and control. So you're talking to whoever's controlling you. So all 3 radios are going simultaneously, so you have to get an ear that's tuned to each radio. So you spend maybe 3 weeks in the front seat, and then he'll start interchanging with you, put you in the back seat for a while on something that's not too critical. And you might do that for another month, maybe. Then, so now you're up roughly 2 months. Then all of a sudden, you're spending the majority of your time in the back seat getting ready to be made an aircraft commander. So here you are, 20, 21 years old. You're an aircraft commander in combat, and you fly that way for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden now you're the mission commander. So you're the guys that tells the aircraft where to go and how you're going to make this attack and how this is all going to work. So then you'll do that for another couple of months, and now you're into it for roughly 6 months, and you get the new guy, and you start that whole sequence over again. And it's just a continuous, guys are coming in, guys are going out, guys are getting hurt, medevaced out, that kind of stuff. So, actually, I forgot what your question was.
He just was asking if you had plenty of supplies. That's where it started.
Yeah. Where I was going with that was 21. I was just probably a month, 2 months into 21 when I went in country, and I was an old guy. I mean, a lot of the average age was right at 20. I mean, I was right in the average. But if you saw somebody over there at 25 flying combat assaults and gunships and stuff, that was an old guy. And so it was a game of 20-year-olds. So I tell people, where the heck else are you going to be 21, just barely 21 years old? They're going to give you a multi-million-dollar attack helicopter and an unlimited budget to shoot ammunition. Pretty cool.
What was it like being separated? Because like you're over there doing a bunch of random things, and she's back home without TV, without FaceTime.
Yeah. This was the age before internet and Zoom and Skype and all that other stuff. So we always laugh that we converse via slow boat to China, snail mail kind of a thing. And so I'd write a letter to her, and it'd take 2 weeks to get there. She'd write a letter to me, take 2 weeks to get there. So the conversation was kind of drawn out. Me, I was busy. I mean, I was up to my eyebrows in the alligator. So did you want to address any of that?
I just worked, and prayed a lot. But I knew he was safe. I thought he was safer up in the air, too. You hear about all these poor grunts on the ground, and I go, oh, thank goodness he's up there flying those helicopters with guns. So it was hard, but it probably went a lot faster for you over there. You were in the action all the time, but yeah, we didn't have, like you said, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have news every day, what's going on, which to me was a good thing, because I didn't know half the stuff that was going over there, and it's probably better I didn't.
And it was very early into my time over there that I wrote her, and I said, do not believe anything that's on the news. Don't believe anything, because I'd be involved in the mission, and all of a sudden it pops up on the news and going, what mission was that? Where was that at? It's nothing that we did. I mean, it's supposed to be talking about us. Yeah.
Look better or scarier.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest misconceptions that you remember? Or anything that was like blatantly steered?
Oh, I can't tell you about, you mean reference news?
Yeah, like when you would do something and then the news would completely...
I can't tell you that I've got a direct thing, but they're talking about all these terrible things going on, and I'm going, man, it's pretty rough over here, but just the way it is. No, so I don't have any specifics, Spence.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Our humor was dark. I told you we did this long-range reconnaissance patrol extractions out of Cambodia when they got in trouble. Well, we got the call one day that they were going to be overrun. We needed to go get them. So we just went, and there were like 5 guys. And so we took a Huey, led us to where they were. So our job's cover the Huey, make sure everybody gets out okay. It was a hover hole. So he had, because of 5 guys, he wasn't going to winch them up. He let a rope out, and they just clipped into the rope. So they're hanging underneath the helicopter, 5 guys. Well, then we were in low clouds, not good visibility, and we had no place to land to put them in the helicopter. So we flew back towards our fire base in the clouds, and we had no navigation aids, no nothing. And at the end of our fire base was a 3,000-foot mountain. And it's flat, except for this cinder cone that comes up 3,000 feet. So we got a compass heading, and we just flew that heading, and we staggered the aircraft at about 500-foot intervals, hoping we wouldn't run into each other. And then the discussion on the radio was, how do we know when we get there? Then when we do get there, how do we get down? So we called the fire base, and they had 105 cannons. And we said, can you guys put one of your cannons straight up and fire a flare like every 30 seconds? Yeah, we can do that. Well, their flare is about the size of a 1-pound coffee can. So we're flying through the clouds, literally, and all of a sudden, I mean, if it hit one of us, we'd just go down immediately. All of a sudden, way over here, we go, whew, oh, there's a flare. Hey, we must be there. So now how do we get down? Well, in instrument flying, they teach you a procedure called a teardrop letdown. So you fly a heading, you do this turn, you do this turn, you do this turn, and you're letting down. That's all we got. Let's try it. So we started down through the clouds, and now we're just waiting to hit the ground. Don't know how far down the clouds are. We actually broke out right at 100 feet above the ground. I mean, it's like from here to the highway. We're coming out of the clouds, and all of a sudden, there it is. Well, the Huey's rope was 100 feet. So he was hanging his guys probably 10 feet off the ground, hovering out there. Next problem is we didn't know where we were. I mean, you know, we just came out of the clouds. We don't know where we're at. So it took us probably 15 minutes to figure out where is the base camp, because we're out in the jungle somewhere. So once we figured out where the base camp was, then we just hovered in. Probably took us 15 minutes to hovering over the trees to get back in. We got in, and the guys that were on the rope thought that was the coolest thing they had ever done. When can we do it again? So yeah, we did a lot of stupid stuff like that.
Sounds scary, but it sounds kind of fun.
How did you say they were hooked up? They just had...
Carabiners and a harness, you know, so just clip in. They had hooks or straps on the rope, kind of a thing.
Any trinkets you want to show off?
Let me,
Any more stories?
well, one. Towards the end of my tour, while you're in Vietnam, you're allowed kind of one vacation out of there. It's called R&R, rest and recuperation. Joyce and I planned on going to Hawaii, and I had been at our forward fire base for about 10 days. I got back into our company area, dark, and big announcement went out. Everybody will be at operations for an emergency briefing tonight, period, set the time, bam, bam, bam. So I was leaving the next day to go to Hawaii to meet her. So I was standing at the back of the room going, yeah, I don't care about this crap, you know. I'm getting out of here. They said, all leaves and R&Rs are canceled. I went, no, mine is not. Yep, you're going. So I said, my wife gets on an airplane in 3 hours. If I don't physically talk to her, I don't care what you do, I am not going. And where we were going was north to Laos. And so, typical Army, they had her on a sat phone like in 30 minutes. And it was the old type where you go, hello, over, you know, so you had to tell the other person that you were done talking before they started talking. So anyway, we got that all coordinated. So we went north for a mission called Lomson 719. Happened to be 1971, and we were going to try and close off Highway 9, the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos, where they had their major distribution center. So it was a 45-day operation. In that 45 days, we had 108 crew members killed. We had 1,200 wounded. We lost 600 aircraft. We had 600 helicopters shot down. My participation started in the second week of it because they had run out of gunships, flat run out of gunships. So I was a senior aircraft commander. I led 12 of our gunships north, fast as we could go. We spread them out between a couple of companies that were units like ours. And the company that I went to had lost 12 aircraft in 7 days. And they started with 22 pilots. They had 2 flyable pilots left when we got there. Where I'm going with this is the month prior, this mission had been planned for 6-8 months. The month before it started,